Well, as the Home Secretary was saying there, emphasising that point that he believes the Rwanda scheme can be delivered without withdrawing from the ECHR. Let's go over some of the key points that James Cleverly was setting out there, not least that the United Kingdom appears to be bucking the trend when it comes to illegal migration, 33% down in the UK, when other European countries are seeing between a third and 100% rises this year in illegal migration. But crucially, the Home Secretary says that the Supreme Court judgment was made on the basis of fact from 15 months ago. He believes that a new treaty with Rwanda could undo that decision, could work to address the concerns of what he described was a temporary setback.
Let's speak to GB News Home and Security editor Mark White. Mark, good afternoon. The government still wants to push ahead with its Rwanda plan, then?
It does, and I think the upshot of what James Cleverly was saying there is that we are going to still have this issue being litigated in the courts for months to come, because although he may well be right that they have addressed a lot of these problems with Rwanda in the months since that original evidence was put before the court system, it's going to have to be fought again, and the government is going to have to prove all over again that actually Rwanda is a safe place to send these asylum seekers to. And that's probably going to mean that it'll go to the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and then potentially up to the Supreme Court again if it has to go through that whole process. So we may be talking the better part of a year again before this is finally concluded. And we're already 19 months on from the point where Boris Johnson stood up in Lady Airport in Kent and announced this policy to the world. And we have not had a single plane as yet leave for Rwanda, and obviously now we're not going to have a plane leaving for Rwanda for many months to come. But, as you say, it's right. The government seem to be still wedded to the Rwanda policy, and the reason for that is simple, because they put through the illegal migration bill through Parliament, and the whole premise of that bill is built on anyone coming into the UK through irregular means, i.e. either coming over in a boat or in the back of a lorry, is declared an illegal immigrant. They are therefore not given the right to claim asylum. They're either then returned to their own country if it's safe to do that, or if it's not safe to do that, you have to return them to a safe third country. That safe third country, at the moment at least, is Rwanda, is the only one that they have. It's the only show in town as far as the government is concerned, seemingly going forward as well.
It's interesting because the Prime Minister, when he stood to be Conservative Party leader over a year ago, said that he'd be looking to other countries to sign these deals with. Of course, he hasn't been able to find one if he has been looking. But it is interesting that the Home Secretary said that he anticipated this outcome and has been working with Rwanda in recent months to upgrade the existing agreement that the United Kingdom has with Rwanda to one of treaty-level stature. Now, what would that actually mean in practice? Why does the government want to upgrade this agreement?
Well, clearly what the court, in coming to its ruling today, was concerned about was the potential for the processing protocols in Rwanda not to be robust enough, in the sense that people could be sent back to their country of origin, to an unsafe country potentially. And so they need to get those guarantees that going forward Rwanda's processing systems would be up to spec. Now, Rwanda has said throughout that it is willing to have the UK government, other third parties present in its country, watching and looking over those procedures to ensure that they are being carried out properly. So it may be building on that the government wants to achieve in going forward. But in saying that they've been working on this for 15 months, well, the Supreme Court evidence was a lot more recent than 15 months ago. Why was that evidence, or at least some of that evidence, not put to the Supreme Court at that point. Certainly Dame Priti Patel, speaking today, has said that she believes that the government has known for a very long time that actually Rwanda's processing systems were not robust enough and should have been taking much more concrete procedures and evidence, really, to ensure that that could be put before the Supreme Court to ensure that we don't have today's outcome. I go back to my main point, which is that whatever the government's intention in going forward regarding Rwanda is concerned, we are not going to get any kind of conclusion now for many, many months to come, because it will all have to be relitigated again with those opposed to Rwanda setting out their arguments once again. So it's a long way to run. And will it come before the next election? Probably not.
This time last week, Mark, we would have been expecting the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, to be making that statement. Instead, it was James Cleverly, who, as Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, said, he's the 8th Conservative Home Secretary in 8 years. And she seemed to suggest that he's never believed in the Rwanda plan. In fact, he privately called it, let's say, bat bleep.
Well, yes, well, she's saying that now. I'm sure if she was still in office, of course, she would be defending it along the same lines as the new Home Secretary is. I mean, he's quick to point out there that it's not all about Rwanda, but it's a key plank. And in fact, it's the main plank of what the Prime Minister has put forward in dealing with the small boats crisis. But he's also saying, you know, deals with Albania in terms of returning those who come from Albania back to that country speedily, more money to France, better law enforcement in terms of cooperation and intelligence with law enforcement agencies on the continent, are all playing their part to reducing the number of people who are coming over in these small boats. I don't think it's as clear-cut as that at all. They may be having some effect, but all those that we speak to very regularly that see that the way in which the channel operates in terms of weather conditions point to just that we've had for many, many months now very unpredictable weather conditions predominantly in the channel, which has meant that it's really difficult for these boats to push off from the shores of northwestern France in the first place, because you've had prevailing winds that have been coming from the north a lot of the time, and that makes it very difficult for the people smugglers to push these flimsy boats out into the channel. And that when we get good weather, as we did just on Sunday there, you see hundreds coming across. 615 people came across just this past Sunday, which shows you that they're still there, they're still willing to try, whatever the government says about the overall numbers being down 33% compared to this time last year.
There was an interesting question as well from former Prime Minister and former Home Secretary Theresa May, challenging James Cleverly to admit that leaving the ECHR would not make the Rwanda policy lawful. Of course, there's a lot of debate now about whether this is the route that the government might go down. Well,
I think that she has got quite a strong argument there. The law lords, as they handed down that judgment in the Supreme Court, did point out that, you know, this was not just they would see it as against the law in terms of what was being planned in Rwanda with regard to the ECHR, but it was also against other treaties from the UN, immigration law and the like. So not just the ECHR. So it does, to an extent, take some of the wind out of the sails of those who say that we've got to pull out of the ECHR because, as I say, in handing down their ruling, Lord Reid there making it clear that it wasn't just the ECHR they were relying on in law here.
Well, Mark White, thank you very much for that detailed analysis of what was quite a sparky exchange in the House of Commons, first with Prime Minister's questions and then with the Home Secretary's statement.